Ground Zero in New York. And I remember standing there the next day and looking at the building. I felt like I was looking through the gates of hell. It looked so devastating.
President Joe Biden in some hot water as of late after his 9/11 memorial speech in Anchorage, Alaska, as many conservatives have been very quick to point out that he may not have been at Ground Zero in New York the day after 9/11, 9/12, because records show that he was in D.C. during a Senate session to condemn the attack. So either Biden is misremembering where he was, which is ironic, never forget, or he's lying. Oh, and speaking of lying, where was Donald Trump during 9/11?
You have one of the landmark buildings down in the financial district, 40 Wall Street. Did you have any damage, or did you know what's happened down there?
Well, it was an amazing phone call I made. 40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest.
Of course he was noticing how his building was now the tallest after the Twin Towers fell. Yeah, real sensitive to all the families of 9/11. Yeah, conservatives, that's your guy.
Where is the president going to be today? Every president since 9/11 has been at one of these sites, but President Biden instead is heading to Alaska to commemorate 9/11 from a military base in Anchorage in a break from tradition.
President Joe Biden was returning after the International G20 Summit, where he stood shoulder to shoulder with leaders all around the globe, strengthening the U.S.'s relationship abroad. And he stopped in Alaska to refuel Air Force One, where he gave his 9/11 unity speech.
I'm just returning from the G20 summit in India, where we strengthened America's leadership on the global stage, followed by a historic trip to Vietnam, where we transformed our partnership in one of the most critical regions in the world. These trips are an essential part of how we're going to ensure the United States is flanked by the broadest array of allies and partners who will stand with us and deter any threat to our security, to build a world that is safer for all of our children.
And of course, the right-wing media and their hate fetish vendetta against Biden decided to pick apart his speech, and instead of reporting all the good things that he just did abroad, like standing up to China, no, they pick apart his speech and find the one gaffe technicality where he could be incorrect, and they extrapolate that out to a wider narrative because they just cannot stand Biden.
It's just not a priority for him, and he's exemplifying that. I tend to believe that if the president really wanted to be there, we give him every asset in the world in Air Force One and all the military that he needs. If he wanted to be there, he could have made it.
You're right. He could have made it there. He could have reshuffled his schedule. However, 9/11 was 22 years ago. President Biden is focusing on the mission at hand to preserve and progress our country now in the present instead of just living in the past. And let's also just take note of where Joe Biden was last year for 9/11 and where he gave his memorial speech. Maybe it was at the Pentagon Ground Zero in D.C.
We regained the light by reaching out to one another and finding something all too rare, a true sense of national unity. To me, that's the greatest lesson of September 11. Not that we will never again face a setback, but that in the moment of great unity, we also had to face down the worst impulses: fear, violence, recrimination directed against Muslim Americans, as well as Americans of Middle Eastern and South Asian heritage. It's that for all our flaws and disagreements, in the push and pull of all that makes us human, there is a nation that cannot accomplish. There's nothing this nation cannot accomplish when we stand together and defend with all our hearts that which makes us unique in the world, our democracy.
Republicans are so desperate to find any tiny gaffe that they can extrapolate into critiquing Biden. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is focusing on now, in the future. And actually, he says that the biggest threat to America now is white supremacy.
To stand up against the poison of white supremacy, as I did my inaugural address, to single out as the most dangerous terrorist threat to our homeland is white supremacy.
Now, I'm not the biggest Biden fan. I will admit it's not the best look when you are misremembering something as important as where you were on 9/11. But also, he's focusing on pushing us forward, shaking hands with leaders at the international summit, negotiating trade deals, in order to push our country forward. Conservatives are trying to live in the past and rehash tensions just so they can rile up their base. They're so desperate to find anything instead of uniting together, which is disrespectful in my view on especially 9/11. And lastly, I'm more concerned with the tweet from Marjorie Taylor Greene claiming that she wants to secede from the Union on such a day where typically Americans come together, no matter your political stripes, to unite against a common enemy, which has been extremism and terrorist threats in America. And as Joe Biden would say, is white supremacy today, which I would agree with. My name is Scott Johnson. You can find more of me here on The Breakdown. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, and you can also find me on my TikTok and on my YouTube, which are in the description box below. I had 13,000 viewers on my TikTok live show this morning. You definitely want to go and check it out if you haven't. I'll see you there.